I met Declan on a September afternoon, when the campus still carried the strong scent of freshly cut grass and autumn was still learning how to touch everything so gently. At that time, I was a sophomore majoring in American literature, the type who always sat in the back row, taking notes with a blue ink pen and always pretending not to notice anyone's gaze. Declan was the opposite. He walked into class as if the light adjusted itself to his footsteps. Tall, broad shoulders, dark brown hair always slightly messy. A smile that could easily make people forget what they were about to say. We were assigned to sit next to each other in the class American Identity after 1945. A name that sounded very academic for a course that most students signed up for just because they thought there would be a lot of documentaries. I remember that moment clearly. Declan pulled out the chair, turned to me, and extended his hand. "Declan," he said, his voice deep and warm. I shook his hand, introducing myself, Callum, and in that instant, I felt like I had known him for a long time. In real life, Declan was someone who kept things hidden. He had friends on the rugby team, loud jokes in the cafeteria, and even an ex-girlfriend that everyone referred to like a safe milestone. As for me, I was an observer. I was used to loving in silence, yearning without daring to name it. We started talking about small things. Whether this week's reading was hard or easy, which cafe on campus made decent espresso, the third-floor library with windows overlooking the lake. Then one evening, Declan texted me asking if I wanted to study together. My dorm room was small, smelling of old paper and instant coffee. He sat on my bed, back against the wall, book open but eyes not reading. We talked about everything. His family in Ohio, how thick the winter snow was. My family in Oregon, the rain-damp trails. When he laughed, the sound echoed in my chest, making me feel like I was in a strangely safe place. The first time Declan touched me wasn't a kiss. It was when he reached for the pen I dropped, his fingers brushing the back of my hand. We both froze. Neither said anything. But in that silence, I heard my heartbeat like a confession. After that night, we started having just the two of us times. Doors closed, curtains drawn, shedding the roles we played outside. Declan in real life was someone else. He kept his distance, smiled appropriately, avoided lingering gazes. But when it was just us, he became my home. The way he rested his forehead against mine, breathing out slowly, as if laying himself down after a long day. The way he called my name, Cal, light as a prayer. We kissed for the first time in silence, lips touching lips, trembling and awkward, like two people learning a new language without a dictionary. I knew Declan was scared. Scared of being seen, scared of being named, scared of losing the world he was used to. I was scared too, but my fear was different. I was scared of only being loved in the dark, scared of handholds that only existed behind closed doors. There were nights I lay beside him, listening to his even breathing, and wondered if I was willingly stepping into a story with no way out. At school, we were two parallel lines. In class, he didn't look at me too long. In the hallway, he called me by my last name. But in my room, in the late evenings when the laughter outside had died down, Declan held me like I was his only anchor. "Here," he whispered, "everything is easier." I wanted to ask, what about out there? But I swallowed the question, trading it for a peaceful night. We loved each other in fragments of time. 15 minutes between classes, an hour before my roommate came back, early mornings when the sun was still sleepy. Each time we parted, Declan returned to his jacket and social smile, while I stayed behind, cleaning up our traces, coffee cups, t-shirts, the scent of skin lingering on the sheets. I didn't know where our story would go. I only knew that when Declan was with me, the world shrank just enough for me to breathe. He was the place I laid my head, the room that didn't need locks, the home I found in someone who was always afraid of being exposed. And I was the one loving someone who only dared to exist fully when no one was watching. Everything started to crack around mid-semester, when the pressure of coursework weighed on every breath and autumn was no longer gentle. Leaves fell so much that the stone paths became slippery, and I realized my feelings were entering dangerous territory just like that, beautiful but easy to fall. Declan started getting busier. The team was in the main season, long practices, late nights. His texts thinned out, shorter, as if each word had to be snuck in. We still met, but each time carried a thin layer of tension like fog. In my room, Declan no longer laughed freely like before. He often stood by the window, looking down at the dorm courtyard where carefree laughter echoed. I saw him pull his zipper higher, as if afraid someone could see through the brick walls to us together. One night I asked directly, "I'm not good at silence when my heart is too full. Are you regretting it?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Declan turned, his eyes flashing panic. "No," he replied too quickly. "It's just, everything out there is too much. Out there. Always out there." I nodded, pretending to understand. But in my chest, a void opened. I loved Declan with all the tenderness I had, but I started to realize. Hidden love has its price, and the one paying is often the one willing to wait. There was a literature department party where almost everyone came. Golden lights, familiar American indie music, the smell of beer and pizza mixed. I stood near the book table talking to a few friends. Declan arrived late, arm around some guys from the team, laughing loudly. When our eyes met, he froze for just a second, enough for me to notice, but not enough for anyone else to suspect. He turned away. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling like I'd just been pushed out of a warm room. That night, we didn't meet. My text went unanswered until nearly midnight. "Sorry. Not good today." That was it. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering when not good became a reason to leave me alone. The next day, Declan appeared at my door, dark circles under his eyes, hoodie pulled tight. He hugged me hard, as if afraid I'd vanish. "I don't want to lose you," he said, his voice breaking. I closed my eyes, inhaling his familiar scent. Soap, sweat, a bit of grass from practice. "Then don't hide me," I whispered. Declan was silent. That silence was heavier than any rejection. We continued, like two people trying to keep a small flame alive in the wind. There were moments beautiful to the point of heartache. Early mornings when the first snow fell, Declan making coffee for me. Times he placed his hand on my back when I was stressed about an essay, saying nothing but enough to steady me. But there were also nights I cried alone in the bathroom, wondering if I was loving an incomplete version of him. I started writing more, pages in a journal no one read, where I named Declan without fear. I wrote about wanting to hold his hand in the middle of campus, about the simple dream of sitting next to him in class without pretending to be strangers. Writing helped me breathe, but it also made the pain sharper. One day, Declan read a passage from my notebook. I'd carelessly left it on the table. He sat there for a long time, eyes glued to my trembling words. When he looked up, I saw tears. "I didn't know you were suffering this much," he said. I didn't blame him. I was just tired. "I don't want to be a secret anymore," I replied softly but firmly. We sat there, facing each other with the truth hanging in the air. I knew Declan loved me, in the way he knew how to love. But I also knew that love was imprisoned in fear. And for the first time, I wondered, could my home be a place that only existed behind closed doors? After that conversation, a silence as long as the approaching winter settled between me and Declan. Not a cold silence, but one full of hesitation. Like two people standing at a crossroads, knowing the next step would change everything. We still met, but not as urgently. Each meeting was deliberate, as if one small misstep could collapse Declan's entire world. Winter truly arrived. Snow blanketed the campus, turning familiar paths into white tunnels. I liked winter, but that year the cold seemed to seep deeper. I often walked alone around the lake near the dorm, headphones on, letting my thoughts swirl. I wondered if I was being selfish, demanding someone be ready for things he couldn't yet. Declan changed very subtly. He started staying in my room longer, no longer constantly looking out the window. Once, when we walked through the library, he slowed to walk beside me, shoulder to shoulder. A small gesture, but it made my heart race. "I'm trying," he said one evening, as we lay side by side, snow tapping lightly on the window. I believed him. I always believed him. But the world out there wasn't forgiving. There were jokes in the locker room, prying eyes, old stories about how men should be. Declan brought it all back to my room, laying it on my chest like stones. I listened, without judgment, but each time, I felt myself shrink a little, as if his fear was taking space from our love. The climax was one evening after a big game. Declan's team won. Everyone went out to celebrate. He texted me, "I'll come by later." I waited. 1 hour. 2 hours. Finally, he arrived, reeking of beer, eyes red. When I asked what happened, he burst into tears. The first time I'd seen Declan like that. "I'm so tired," he said. "I don't know who I am out there." I held him, letting him cry on my shoulder. In that moment, I loved him to the point of pain. But I also realized I couldn't be his only place to unload. A home couldn't just be for two if the whole world was locked out. We argued, a real argument, no longer gentle. I said I needed more. Declan said he wasn't ready. Words clashed, shattering the illusions we'd tried to hold. In the end, Declan left in the night, leaving the room silent and me with empty hands. The weeks after were a string of quiet days. I focused on coursework, my job at the library, coffee with friends. But everything had Declan's shadow. I saw him from afar, on the field, in class, and my heart tightened. We didn't talk. No texts. No touches. I started learning how to be alone. Not lonely, but fully present with myself. I rewrote our story, this time not just with longing, but with truth. That loving someone also means knowing when to let go. It didn't make the love smaller. It made me bigger. At the end of the semester, the snow melted gradually, revealing patches of brown grass. I thought everything was over. Then one afternoon, Declan stood at my door, thinner, eyes strangely bright. "I've talked to someone," he said. "The coach." I said nothing, just waited. "I can't live like this forever," he continued. "I'm scared. But I'm more scared of losing you." I looked at him for a long time. I saw the guy who had once been my secret, and the person learning to step into the light. I didn't know if we could come back from the cracks we had. But for the first time, Declan stood there, not hiding. And I realized my home might no longer be a closed room. Declan didn't step into my room right away. He stood at the threshold, as if one more step meant no turning back. I noticed his hands trembling, very slightly, but enough for me to see. That hurt more than any apology. I was used to Declan being strong, steady, always knowing where he belonged. The version in front of me now was someone learning to stand on his own feet. "I'm not here to demand," he said. "I just want you to know I'm really trying to change." I nodded, letting him in. We sat facing each other, not touching, like two strangers with too many shared memories to start over easily. Declan told me about that conversation. No dramatic details, no bold lines like in movies. Just a small room, a middle-aged man listening, and for the first time, Declan speaking the truth without laughing it off. "I thought I'd fall apart," he confessed. But no, everything stayed still. The world didn't end. I listened, my heart both lighter and heavier. Lighter because he'd taken a big step. Heavier because I knew one step couldn't erase everything we'd endured. "I can't go back to how it was," I said slowly. "I can't love someone who only exists in the dark anymore." Declan nodded. He didn't argue. In a way, that was more trustworthy than promises. We started over, not as lovers, but as two people learning to be beside each other without hiding. For the first time, we sat next to each other in class without pretending to be strangers. No hand-holding, just knees touching under the table. My heart pounded the whole time, but not out of fear of being discovered, because I was living truthfully. Rumors started appearing, sporadic and vague. I heard Declan's name whispered somewhere behind me, lingering glances longer than necessary. Declan heard more than I did. Some days he was silent, shoulders tense. I didn't push. I was just there, going with him to the library, sitting watching him do workouts when the field was empty. Love now wasn't burning desire. It became patience. One early spring afternoon, the snow almost all melted, only dirty white streaks left on the roadside. We walked around campus, cold wind but no longer cutting. Declan stopped in front of the brick wall where students often posted event flyers. There was a small poster, LGBTQ plus student meetup Friday night. He stared at it for a long time, then turned to me. "Would you go?" I asked. Declan took a deep breath. "If you come with me." That Friday night, we walked into the common room on the ground floor of the dorm. Bright lights, murmuring conversations, the atmosphere not at all scary like Declan had imagined. He sat next to me, hand on his thigh, not touching me but close enough for me to feel. When someone greeted us, Declan responded, voice slightly shaky, but he didn't back down. I looked at him and thought, maybe this is our new home. We didn't kiss in front of anyone. No need. Intimacy now lay in Declan not pulling his hand away when I accidentally touched it, in him not changing the subject when someone asked directly about me. Those small things added up, becoming something big. Of course, not everything was smooth. Once, someone on the team made a heavy joke. Declan was silent all day. I thought he'd retreat into his shell. But that night, he called me. "I'm still here," he said. "It's just been hard today." I realized I was smiling hearing that, because he didn't disappear. The first time we held hands in public was on a late evening, when the campus was empty. No one watching, but no one needed to not watch. His hand was warm, gripping tight, as if afraid I'd melt away. I squeezed back lightly, letting him know, "I still choose you, but not by losing myself." Declan in real life is still learning to live truthfully. And I'm learning to love without sacrificing my boundaries. We're no longer a perfect secret, nor a fairy tale. But for the first time, I feel our home has windows to let light in, and for us to look out at the world without fear. Spring came slowly but surely, like how Declan is learning to live truthfully, not rushing, not turning back to run. The trees on campus started greening again, stone benches warming under the sun. I realized I no longer counted his texts. No more waiting in anxiety. We met regularly, sometimes morning coffee, sometimes just sitting side by side reading. Intimacy now didn't need to hide to exist. One afternoon, after the last class of the week, Declan invited me to the lake. The water rippled, reflecting the pale blue sky. We sat on the wooden steps, shoes close together. "I've talked to someone else," he said, eyes straight ahead. "My roommate." I turned, not hiding my surprise. Declan smiled softly. He just said, "Yeah, I figured," then asked if I wanted pizza. I burst out laughing, a relieved laugh. Some life-changing moments happen so simply it's unexpected. Declan continued, about the feeling of shedding a heavy armor. "I don't have to remember what lies I've told anymore," he said. I placed my hand on his in broad daylight without fear. He squeezed back, didn't let go. At the end of the semester, the literature department held a student reading event. I signed up to read a prose piece, not explicit, but enough for anyone perceptive to understand it was a love story between two guys. Declan sat in the third row. When I finished, the room applauded. I looked down, saw him standing with everyone, eyes wet but proud. Afterward, in the hallway, he hugged me. Not long, not showy, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. We still have hard days. Unfriendly glances, nosy questions. Sometimes Declan comes to my room with slumped shoulders. But unlike before, he doesn't disappear. He talks. I listen. Then we move on together. I'm no longer his only refuge. I'm his companion. That changes everything. One night, as the semester neared its end, we lay on the rug in my room, window cracked open. Wind carried the scent of damp earth. Declan turned to me. "Are you scared?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "Yes," I replied. "But not alone anymore." Declan nodded. "Me too." We didn't promise things too far off. No firm lines for the future. Just small plans. Staying on campus for summer, renting a room near the library together, cooking our first dinner without watching the clock. Our love now isn't a hidden flame. It's a hearth warm, enduring, needing care. On the last day of the semester, the campus bustled with suitcases and goodbyes. Declan held my hand openly amid the passing people. My heart pounded not from fear, but happiness. I thought about the phrase that once haunted me. In real life, you hide me. Yes, once. But now, whether just the two of us or with the world around, Declan is there, and so am I. I realized home isn't a place without storms. Home is where you don't have to disappear when the storm comes. With Declan, I learned that love isn't just longing. It's courage practiced every day. And for me, Declan is no longer a secret whispered in the dark. He is a home with an open door, safe enough for me to return, wide enough for us to step out together.